series. So let's give it up, show some love and some energy for Hannah Sutton. Thank you, Hannah.
Good morning. Since we're a nice, intimate group, I really want this to be more of a conversation. I mean, I know we've also got some online viewers as well, but anytime that you have a question for me throughout, please don't hesitate to just jump right in. We do not have to wait till the end to have that conversation.
And ask for the mic, because for our online audience to hear, you have to speak into the mic so they can evaluate your question.
Perfect. Thank you, Clifton, for bringing us all together. I love that it's called the Empower series, because that is a big piece of what we aim to do every day at Opportunity Resource Services. We really want, my goal is that y'all come away from this feeling empowered, feeling hopefully that you learned something new, and also that we have a connection to each other that we can lean on should you need something from me or vice versa, right? Okay, so today our topic is obviously going to be primarily scholarship strategies, but I want to give you some background about who I am, who we are, and why I'm even here speaking to you on this. So just a little overview, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. And again, I also hope that you feel confident after today that if education is on the horizon, or if there's somebody else that you're hoping to help navigate through this, that you have that confidence that there are possibilities, there are opportunities out there. So one of our big mottos is success is never a straight line. It looks completely different for every single individual. So we really believe that higher education is a big umbrella. That covers a lot of ground. It does not have to look the same for every single person. Some people are going to do great with the training that they can do within 4 to 6 weeks and then go to work. Bless you. Some others are going to benefit from a longer term certificate or an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or even higher, right? So who is Opportunity Resource Services? We are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2010. We actually started out with Upward Bound programs in Johnson County. So Johnson County, if y'all aren't familiar, it is southwest of Fort Worth, more of a rural area, right? Now we have expanded to serve Dallas and Tarrant County as well, and that happened in 2021. So our mission is to disrupt generational poverty by empowering those who are vulnerable, especially, we work with teens and adults, and I work primarily with adults. We'll get into that. But especially first generation college students, so the people who are their first in their family to ever do this, and those who are coming from a lower income background. That was me. Almost every single person at our organization relates to this mission on a personal level. I went to college simultaneously with my mom and my older sister. We were the first people to do it. So learned a lot of things along the way, also made a lot of mistakes, right? And so now what I'm passionate about is giving people the information that I wish that I had had, so that they can avoid some of the pitfalls and make better decisions that will hopefully keep them out of debt and also get them further along. We really do also do a lot with those who are involved with the criminal justice system in some way. So we work a lot with currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated individuals, both on a youth and adult level. And our goal at the end of the day is to help every person in our program to attain a higher education degree of value. And again, that could be a certificate, it could be a full degree, but a degree or certificate of value means that is something that did not cost a huge amount of money, did not put that individual into debt, and will actually get them employed in the workforce, right? Securing that gainful employment and then achieving social mobility. So we really do believe that education is a path out. It breaks cycles. Generational poverty is absolutely something that my family and parts of my family still are victimized by, right? But that education piece is huge to getting that path out. So our programs, we currently have 9 TRIO grants, which Clifton mentioned that those are federally funded. So all of our funding is coming from the Department of Education. Of course, you know, y'all watch the news and have heard some things. But we are hopeful and remain optimistic that TRIO predated the Department of Education, and we will rise. We will continue. We will fight because we serve too many people, help too many people, and also are drivers of the workforce too. You know, so we don't worry about the bad. We're here to just do everything that we can do every day. Until I know different, that's how I'm going to operate. And even when I do know different, I'm still going to operate like that. So 3 of our 9 programs are the Educational Opportunity Centers, which is the program that I work for. We'll get more into that. And then we have 3 Upward Bound programs and 3 Upward Bound math and science programs. So those are specific to a high school. Y'all have some familiarity already with Upward Bound. We currently have an Upward Bound at Lancaster High School, actually that's an Upward Bound Math and Science at Lancaster. We have an Upward Bound at Southwest High School in Fort Worth. And then we have 4 Upward Bound programs in that Johnson County area. So that's Alvarado, Keene, Rio Vista, and Venus High Schools. Just a little bit of background about me, because again, I want y'all to know why I'm even here. So I'm the director of our Educational Opportunity Centers. I am an Arlington, Texas native. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, but eventually landed in Arlington, so I'm claiming that. I have 13 years total of higher ed experience. I have also worked 3 years in admissions offices, both at Tarrant County College and at Tarleton State University. And then I have been at ORS working with the EOC programs since 2017. So I started 1 month before my son was born, so I always know exactly how long I've been here, because he is now 8. And I love what I do. I'm here because I love it. And I have done every level. So I started as an advisor, then assistant director, and eventually PD. What is TRIO? So TRIO programs are federal outreach and student support programs. They all have something in common, though, in that they are funded to serve those disadvantaged students. So those who are, again, first generation in their families and coming from a low-income background. There's several different types, but I'm going to talk to y'all more about mine because I'm very proud of what we do. And we are a community program. So we are here for anybody who needs the help or needs the resources. So what EOC programs do, and we're not the only ones, right? It's a national program. There are currently about 120 EOC programs throughout the country. We have 3 of those. So again, we have one that is funded specifically for Dallas County. We have one that is funded for Tarrant County and one that is funded for Johnson County. But even for any listeners who may be here or from our wonderful coach Leah, who drove in from Houston, we're able to serve anybody who needs the help as long as we serve them, as long as we provide the services within Dallas County, if that makes sense. So it could be virtual. Eligibility is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So our clients just have to be U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or U.S. nationals. They have to be seeking to enroll or currently enrolled in some form of post-secondary education. But again, that can be a lot of things, right? And then they just have to be needing information or assistance and applying for admission or financial aid for one of those programs. So our services, we have a lot of things that we can do, but ultimately our goal is to eliminate barriers. Eliminate any barrier to being successful. I know it's a little hard to see, I'll read them out loud to y'all. Eliminate any barrier to actually enrolling in whatever level of higher education somebody's looking to obtain. So we do a lot of college and career counseling. We help people apply to college or trade school. We do financial aid application assistance. That's one of our big ones. We do FAFSA assistance day in and day out. We do every other grant application as well, like the Texas Public Education Grant or TPEG. We do scholarship resources, so what we're here today to talk about is something that we also offer. Career assessments, and then we also currently have 500 scholarships for Google Career Certificates, which I'll talk about at the end. So if that's something that anybody is interested in, we're able to offer those for free. Transcript requests, and that can be a big one. It's a small thing, but if you have to pay a $10, $20 fee every time you order a transcript, for some people that adds up a lot. That can be the difference between going and not going. And so that's something that we are able to cover. We also do vital document and state ID recovery. We do that through a partnership with an organization called Vote Writers. And so we're able to pay for any fees associated with driver's license, state ID, or birth certificate recovery. Student loan rehabilitation is, again, another big one, because that can be such a burden, and it can stop you in your tracks. If you have student loans in default, that can prevent you from qualifying for federal aid. So we talk to people about the programs. Unfortunately, right now, there are less programs than there were even 6 months ago. But again, that's temporary. But there are still a lot of options to getting loans out of default and qualifying for aid again. And so that's something that we do. And then we also do GED and TSI test prep, and we can also pay for exam fees. So any individual who needs to start with high school equivalency and get that GED or equivalent to a high school diploma, we refer them to free resources, whether that's a virtual GED prep or something in person, like through the Dallas Public Library. And then we can pay for those exam fees if that's something, again, because each GED is over $32, each GED exam. Again, that adds up. And again, I just wanted to give you that background. So this is what we hope every individual that we work with comes away knowing. That they can gain industry recognized credentials. So again, whether that's certificate or degree, it is something that actually means something to employers, right? It's something that's regionally accredited, something that you can put on a resume and actually get a job with. We want to avoid for-profit schools with predatory practices, and they are rampant, right? There's a lot more regulation now than there used to be, but it is still a big problem. For-profit schools, at the end of the day, are in it to make money. And so they are willing sometimes to do that at the disadvantage of their students. And they will also award certificates and degrees that are not regionally accredited. They're not held to the same standards. And they can shut down like that. So that's something that we really talk to our clients about is, what are the options? And if they're looking at a for-profit school, we ask why. What is it that they're looking for there? And then let's talk about other options that might be a better fit. We want to maximize that free student aid and grant opportunities, right? There's a lot out there that we're going to get into. We want to make sure that people come away knowing what those options are and how to access them. And then, we want to minimize unnecessary student debt. So that is what I did wrong, right? I didn't know what I was doing. My mom and my sister sure didn't know what they were doing either, because again, we were doing it all together and just figuring things out. I even benefited a little bit more from the knowledge that they learned as they got farther along, but even so, I could have minimized my debt because I just didn't know. I'm lucky that I have benefited from that public service loan forgiveness program. We need more people to qualify for that. But had I not, I would still be paying my loans to this day, right? Okay, and then again, just what exactly are we paying for? How much money do we need to come up with here? So I wanted to give a little bit of background about the different types of institutions. Everybody's coming to the table with different levels of knowledge, so I just wanted to get us all on the same page. We have not-for-profit private universities. So these are institutions that are not making a profit overall. Their money is being funneled back into their programs, back into the degrees and the services to students. But they are, in general, going to be a higher expense. Something that I think is interesting, so I always ask the question, what's the difference between a private and a public university? And when I ask this to students, I get some really interesting answers, but I always get at least one who says, well, a private university is better. You're going to get a better education. Are you? Maybe, but it's not a black and white answer, right? It is not a straight yes or no. Some private universities are great, but you really have to look at the individual level, and you have to look at what program. You have to really get down into what the details are. So if you're looking to go to TCU, and I love to pick on TCU, they're the most expensive of almost any private university in the state. Anybody give me a guess, how much do you think TCU costs for 1 year of just tuition and fees? I'm not even talking about living on campus. I'm not talking about books. 60? You're pretty close. So I think it's actually gone up a little bit. I think it's about 70. 65, 70, yeah. For 1 year. And then what are you going to be ultimately getting? A bachelor's degree, right? And how many years does that typically take? 4 years. So you're actually going to multiply that by 4, and that's your total price tag.
Yeah, I just looked it up. So in 2024, 2025, it was 61,000. But in 2025, it was
63,500. And that's just the tuition. And as we know, there's a lot more that goes into that than just tuition. So that's just something to keep in mind. So if you're talking about, I'm going to TCU to get an education degree, that's a very noble degree to get, and it's a great, we need educators, right? You don't need to go to TCU, though, to do that. Even if, when I hear people say, I want to go to TCU for something like music or even engineering, right? And engineers make a lot of money. But TCU does not have the best engineering degree. You know who does, at least in this area? UT Arlington, UT Dallas, and they're public institutions. So that's, we need to get down into the nitty gritty. Like what is it that you're looking for, and who really has the best program? In a lot of the case, it's going to be a cheaper option that is actually a better fit. So our public universities, and again, these are also going to be our not-for-profit. So all of that money is getting funneled right back into their programs. And both of these options are going to offer certificate programs, they're going to offer bachelor's degrees, and they're going to offer graduate level degrees as well. Typically, a not-for-profit university tuition and fees is going to range around $12,000 for 1 year. So we're already talking about a big difference. We've gone down a lot already. UTA, Tarleton, those are all examples. UTD, UTD is actually a little bit more expensive, but they're still going to range around 10 to 15,000. You're going to find their tuition, it will fit somewhere in there. And the reason for that, just so y'all know, and you may already know, is really coming from where's their funding coming from. If they're a private institution, they cannot get any tax funding. They don't get any funding from the state. And so they're making up for that by increasing tuition. A public university is able to get a portion of their funding from the state of Texas, from the tax dollars that we all pay. And so that helps them subsidize their tuition, make it lower for those who are residents of the state of Texas. And for that same reason, community colleges are going to be even more affordable than that, because they're not only getting state tax dollars, they're also getting county level taxes to make their tuition even less. So it's always going to be the absolute most affordable if you go to a community college in the county that you're a resident of.
So that works no matter what state you're in, because we have somebody online from Ohio and Virginia.
Oh, yes.
And actually, I was telling you, my son went to The Ohio State University,
Yeah.
but he was also accepted to other out-of-state colleges.
Yes.
But it was a significant break on tuition going to Ohio State since he was a resident of Ohio State. Plus,
yes.
He got scholarships, right?
Exactly.
So he didn't have any student loans. But
yeah.
I just want to make sure that we talk from a national perspective too, even though we're here in Texas.
Yeah, that same rule applies anywhere. So those tax dollars are coming from whatever state. And that's the same reason exactly why out-of-state tuition is higher than in-state tuition, is because, again, where did you pay your taxes? Scholarships are going to be an exemption to that rule that we'll talk about here soon. So actually, if you get a competitive scholarship at an out-of-state university, they may waive your tuition and give you an in-state tuition waiver because they really want you to go there. So that's something to keep in mind. Out-of-state doesn't necessarily mean more expensive, again, if you're getting a competitive scholarship from that university. But community college, and this is the same in Texas as it is in any community college in any county, they're going to be the more affordable option. So if we're really talking about starting from scratch and not having any funding lined up for a school, that's a great starting place. And this is where I could have done better. I could have started at a community college. I could have gone to TCC and then transferred, and my degree would have cost half of what it ended up costing. So of course we've got Dallas College here, campuses all over Dallas County. And y'all, Dallas College is a great option. They have so many programs. But the same is true anywhere. Houston Community College, out of state, there's a community college close to wherever you are. And they offer certificates, associate's degrees. More and more now, we're seeing community colleges are offering full 4-year bachelor's degrees. Yes. Dallas College has a couple of options already. Collin College, yes. Thank you for saying that. I should add that in my slide. Collin College absolutely does too. That is becoming the next thing for community colleges. So you could get your entire degree paying this tuition price. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to also speak about dual credit, and do you have any partnerships with the high schools with your program?
Thank you for asking. So the question was, what can we speak on dual credit, and what partnerships do we currently have with high schools? And we do partner with quite a few high schools. Most high schools that offer dual credit, I say most because not all do. Most high schools that do offer dual credit programs, which is where you can earn college credits while you're still in high school, of course, they typically are going to offer those for free. But a lot of schools do still have a tuition cost associated with that. And that can be a challenge because getting college credits before your high school graduation, you also will not be able to qualify for federal student aid, which is something that we'll talk more about. But if that's something that anybody is needing to do, we will look at all the resources possible. But my hope is that they would be attending a high school that does offer those credits for free. And more high schools are getting to the point where they're offering that you can get a full associate's degree before you even graduate. And they do partner with the community college to do that, right? So your Dallas County high schools are primarily going to be using Dallas College, Tarrant County College, et cetera. The high schools that we partner with in Dallas County, we do a lot with Cedar Hill ISD. We do a lot with Lancaster. Dallas ISD. So we have a few partnerships within Dallas ISD. I will say, because of the nature of our program, we really target schools that need us, right? And so if they have a big network of other resources, which a lot of Dallas ISD schools do, which is amazing, they don't always see how we can fit into that. But we do a lot with alternative or credit recovery schools. So we partner with the Life High Schools. There's a campus in Oak Cliff as well as in Waxahachie. So those are the schools that we really end up working the most with. Yes, sir.
So I have a couple of questions, or a comment first. You talked about the 4-year degrees that are offered at Dallas College. Some of those are in business administration, like in management, finance, marketing, and information services,
Yes.
Including AI.
Yes.
But then also in college, in Collin College, it's more the science of in nursing, technology, and applied sciences, construction management, as well as clinical operational management.
Right.
So the question, though, is when you look at the Dallas Promise, I don't know if you want to speak about that.
Yes, I am.
But my understanding is that for, at least in Dallas, I'm not sure in other cities, there might be a partnership where your tuition is covered if you graduate from certain high schools.
We're going to get a lot into Dallas
Okay, got it.
Promise. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Okay, and then moving on, real quick, again, my little spiel about for-profit schools. So examples of these are Full Sail University, Lincoln Tech, another one would be UTI, University of Phoenix. Oh, I didn't change that. Midwestern State should not be on there. Pretend like it's not. UTI. Let's sub them out. I used to have art institutes on there, but they have since shut down. And you'll see, I don't know if you can see that, but my little price tag here, it says $16,000 to $90,000. You're going to see their tuition ranges anywhere between those. That $90,000 is a real, actual tuition price that I got from the Art Institute's website before they had closed down. So just know that. And sometimes they have great marketing, which is why I think a lot of people still kind of get drawn to that. Lincoln Tech is another one that we hear a lot. And what we end up, when we do a little digging, they want to go to Lincoln Tech for an automotive certificate, which is a great program to do. But why Lincoln Tech? And that's what we talk about. So Lincoln Tech, to get an automotive certificate, anybody want to guess how much that would cost? Yeah. It's about $35,000. Just the certificate? $35,000. Yes, ma'am.
What would be the alternative to instead of going to Lincoln Tech to get that automotive?
Dallas College.
Maybe an automotive.
They have an excellent automotive program. Yeah. You can get diesel certified. I mean, you can do just about anything you want to do on a trade level, Dallas College. And you'll be able to do it for free. At least most likely you'll be able to do that for free, and we'll talk about that. Dallas College, I mean, I can't say enough good things about them. They're one of our big partners. So we actually go in for these trade cohorts. I'm going to go back a couple slides. My picture on the front here, this is actually one of the Dallas College cohorts that we did. The FAFSA applications, we did the grant applications for every single student. And this one was construction, I think. We do them with their electrical cohorts. So we go in and we help all those students make sure that they apply or are able to access that aid, right? And then a few weeks later, they've got that certificate. They're ready to actually go and either get a job with that or continue on, right, and do a more advanced degree if they want to. And that was one of the graduations. But absolutely, so the alternative would be Dallas College. And if it's not free, well, first of all, we need to talk because we need to find out why it wasn't free. But it's going to be very affordable. And you're not going to be going into debt to go to Dallas College. There's no reason. The same would be true for, again, any community college, right? So on a national level, but even also within the state of Texas, TCC, any community college is going to have a variety of trade programs that you can choose from.
So say you have someone who is an adult
Yes.
out of their 20s,
Yes.
looking to go back. Does that, if they say they want to go get an automotive
Mhm.
certificate, is it going to be free for them, or is that only for high school?
No, it's for adults. So those cohorts, that picture, that graduation picture, those were all adult students. Yeah, those were students who were looking to go back into the workforce, maybe have varying degrees of past experience, past education, and they were adult students.
And I have some information here. So you were right on the cost of Lincoln Tech, which is like, it could be anywhere from $32,000 to $40,000. But at Dallas College, a level one certificate typically requires 1 to 2 semesters to complete. Tuition ranges from $1,500 to $1,900.
Exactly. And after financial aid,
Yeah, with financial aid, it could be just net zero.
you should be at zero. Yeah. And we'll talk about the financial aid aspect because there's a lot that goes into that, right? But that's, again, I hope you come away from that knowing how many opportunities there are. And then the other issue before I move on, for-profit schools, is that they can just shut down at the blink of an eye, at the drop of a hat. Because again, they're not held to that regional accreditation standard and they're operating like a business. When they're no longer making money or making a profit, then they're going to shut their doors. And so with the art institutes, there were 8 locations across the country, just like that, gone. And students who were currently enrolled in those may have taken on student loans, may have gone into debt, and now have nothing to show for it. And their time, you can get that debt canceled, but your time is money too. And that time that you put into that program should mean something. Your time is very valuable. And so whatever you're sinking your time into and putting effort into should at least either be able to transfer to another school or again get you into that workforce. Coach Leah.
I was going to ask you, what are you seeing in regards to for-profit schools and what are you seeing in regards to the for-profit schools and those credits transferring to another school? Can you speak about that, please?
Yes, that is an excellent question. So as far as transferability of credits from for-profit schools, they don't often work very well in relationship to other schools that are accredited. And so you may find that if you had a lot of credits from a for-profit school, when you go, and actually I have an example of this that happened just recently. Gosh, what school was it? It might have been Grand Canyon, but do not quote me on that. It might have been Grand Canyon University, but it was a school that she had a lot of credits from, and she was attempting to go and finish out her bachelor's degree. I mean, she had almost what would typically get you a bachelor's degree, that level of credits. And she wanted to go and get her teacher certification. Well, when she was trying to go and enroll at a public university and get all of her credits to transfer, it did not look good. And she was devastated. Like, she had done so much to get those credits that she already had, and now they're telling her, you're almost starting from zero. I mean, and we talked about the options, and there were options for her. And sometimes that looks like going out and just finishing that degree. I think it was Grand Canyon University. But if she wanted to continue at that public university, let's talk about a flexible degree option, like a Bachelor's of Applied Arts and Science degree, where maybe they're going to be able to sub a block of credits for those credits that you had already gotten. So there are options, but the moral of that story is that they don't transfer well. It's not, one versus one.
Where does a college like WGU stand?
Okay, so it might have been WGU. So the question was, where does a college like Western Governors University or WGU stand? And what I would say is some of them are good options. It might have been WGU. It was one of the big online universities. So those are not always for profit. Sometimes they are though. And so you might have to do a little digging. And again, if you don't know or if you're not sure, we can help you with that to figure out, is it regionally accredited? Is it a for-profit school? What's their tuition really look like? Those are all things that should be considered before actually getting to that enrollment step. You want to know, again, that degree is going to be valuable at the end of the day. And it may be a good option, but ask those questions first, right? And see what the answers are. Don't go in with your mind already made up. And I see that a lot, especially with our younger students. They already had their mind made up before we ever came in the door, Have an open mind. And I get it, like you have a dream, and that dream means something. Like, you should follow that dream, because if you're not following your dream, you're not going to do it. If you're not passionate about what you're trying to do and what comes next, you're not going to follow through, right? You can't just be doing something because somebody else wanted it for you. You have to want it the most. And so we want to follow that dream with them, but let's look at all the ways that that dream can manifest, right? It doesn't have to be this one way. It does not have to be Lincoln Tech because they said you were going to get a great job. You're going to get a great job if you go to Dallas College also.
It's kind of hard to match it up with what a lot of us feel like is the college experience.
Mm-hmm.
We may not feel like we get that college experience at a community college living at home with mom.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And that's absolutely how I felt.
Can you repeat that?
So she said it's hard to feel like you're going to be getting that college experience if you're going to a community college and just living at home with mom and dad. And that is absolutely true. I felt that when I was graduating from high school. I didn't want to just live at home, even though that would have saved a lot of money, right? It's not seen as like, yeah, that college experience, that thing that we all see in the movies and see on TV, and that can feel like what you want. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. Nothing at all. And we're going to talk about how you can even make that happen. But don't sleep on a community college is all I'm saying. Especially for a trade program, because a trade program, you're not necessarily looking for that college experience. That's not going to be the right fit for everybody. You have to think about what's the best fit for you. And so for trades, community colleges really can't be beat. They're always going to be the best in the business when it comes to that. But if the university experience is what you want, there are ways to get it that will still be smart and still allow you to make that dream happen without all the debt. And we're going to talk about that. I'll keep going because you might have to stop me because I can talk about this all day. All right, so before we get into the scholarship aspects, I just wanted to come away again with us all being on that same page, that foundation level of what are the different types of financial aid and what does that look like? Because scholarships are one piece of the puzzle, but they're not the end-all be-all because there's a lot that's going to go into that before you even get to that scholarship level. So financial aid 101, you've got your grants, and grants are what we want people to access first. There's a lot of reasons for that. Yes, ma'am.
Don't the grants have stipulations though?
Yes. So grants all do have different requirements and different stipulations. We'll talk about that. But you do have to apply for those by completing the FAFSA form, right? And the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Even though FAFSA has the word federal in it, it's actually the one-stop shop for all federal and state, and also even institutional, so meaning at that specific college or university. The FAFSA form is your one-stop shop. You're just going to do that FAFSA to access that type of aid. Typically, it is going to be based on financial need, though, yeah, and the Pell Grant in particular, which we'll talk about. But grants do not have to be paid back as long as you stay enrolled and do your best in that program for that semester. Then you also have work study, which is a part-time position working on campus while you're enrolled in school. It can be a great option to kind of supplement any other aid that you're getting. I did work study when I was in college, and you can also get work experience. The great thing about work study jobs as well is that they're going to be flexible around a school schedule, because at the end of the day, you're a student first in their eyes and a worker second. Loans, of course, and sometimes, I've talked a lot about minimizing debt. I don't want to villainize student loans completely, though, because I used them, right? They got me, at the end of the day, they got me where I needed to be. But there's a pathway that is more sensible than just what I did, which was click accept all, right? Because I didn't know. I clicked first and thought later because I was 19 years old and just I saw the dollar signs and thought, well, I do need that money. So there's a way to utilize loans that is more of an investment in your future. Loans are not to say you should never ever touch a loan. They're not all created equal though. So you have different types. You have subsidized loans. Subsidized loans are offered by the Department of Education, and they are always going to have a lower interest rate than a private loan. That interest rate is also going to be kept in check by the government. And a subsidized loan, it's called a subsidized loan. You'll also hear it called like a direct Stafford loan. That's the same thing. A subsidized loan is called that because the government is actually paying on your interest while you're enrolled in school. So if you're borrowing $5,000 at the beginning of your degree path, at the end of your degree path, you still only owe $5,000 on that loan. You didn't accrue any interest during that time period. Does that make sense? Unsubsidized loans are also going to be offered by the government, also going to have lower interest rates, but you will accrue interest throughout your entire education career. So as far as loans go, subsidized are always going to be the best one to utilize if you have to. But again, it should be part of your thought process of, is this going to be valuable? Is this something that I should do to invest in myself?
I have to get two sidetracked. Is it on? Can you hear me? Oh, online. Okay. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I would like to know a little bit about the Department of Education being cut and slashed with the Trump administration.
Yes.
How does that work? Is it a realistic situation where they may not do any more subsidized loans?
So it's always going to be a possibility, right? I mean, we used to say that these programs were going to be the hardest ones to cut, and they still are. It's going to take a literal act of Congress. Does not mean that it couldn't happen, but it would actually take an act of Congress to affect federal student aid. What I will say on that, and I cannot predict the future, right? None of us can. We don't know what's going to happen, especially in a current administration where they don't play by the rules anymore. I'll say that as delicately as I can. What would likely happen if the Department of Ed were to be slashed? Now, the word on the street that I have gotten most recently is that the Department of Ed is not actually going anywhere. But if it were to happen, the programs that are currently operated by the Department of Ed would most likely be transferred to other departments. So in the case of federal student aid, it would most likely shift to like the Treasury Department to operate. TRIO programs that are currently in operation would most likely be shifted to Department of Labor, like that sort of thing. So it wouldn't actually be eliminating so much as in name. Oh, the Department of Ed is gone and they did what they said they were going to do, right? That would be my prediction if that were to happen, but I also ultimately don't believe that it will happen. But that could be naive, and I'm willing to admit that. But that's a great question, and should those things actually be eliminated, which it is a possibility, and we can't run from that. I think what would end up happening, we'll get to this. Institutional aid is going to be a great source of funding, and I think what would end up happening is that most institutions, universities or colleges that offer aid, they would end up making up the difference that's coming from, because ultimately federal student aid is going to be this much of paying for a bachelor's degree, and the institutional aid or the scholarships are going to be this much anyway. So they're just going to have to come up with that difference to keep students enrolled. I hope that answered your question.
So right now today, students going to school in August have nothing to worry about.
No, I don't believe so. I mean, no.
Okay, so everybody's fine going into August. The other question would be, I got here a little late, but some of the questions about I saw what you had on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the universities that have went out of business. well, let me rephrase the question. If you, do you know the criteria if you want to start a school and you want to accept the GSLs, guaranteed student loans?
The criteria if you wanted to accept the loan?
Yes, if you have a school and you want to say, okay, we're going to accept the guaranteed student loans from the government, is there, do you know the pathway on how to do that?
Yes. So the first step, of course, would be completing that FAFSA form and submitting it to the school. And then the loan is going to be part of their financial aid award. It'll.
I'm saying if I'm going to create my own WGA, right?
Oh, okay. Oh,
I want to
for
have my
them
own
to
school,
offer the
yes,
loan.
and I'm going to offer guaranteed student loans. I know it's a process you have to go through the government, but I just didn't know what that process was. Like, how does a school become a
Administer financial aid.
yes.
I see what you're saying. So a school would have to be Title IV eligible. I don't know what all goes into that. They do have to meet certain criteria to be able to administer federal student aid. And then, of course, they have to be upheld to reporting requirements, which a lot of schools are not going to be able to even. So they have to be a Title IV school. I don't know what all goes into the eligibility for becoming a Title IV school, but they are going to have certain requirements that they'll have to meet, and then they would also have reporting requirements. Reporting. Mm-hmm. Because if they're administering aid, they will have to report to the Department of Education as far as the success of their programs and as far as the number of students that they are. But they also are going to have they have to have a lot of audit trail, because if you're administering money, you have to back that up with who you gave it to, how were they eligible, and what was their financial need. But I don't know everything that goes into that. I'll admit that is above my pay grade. And then, of course, we've got scholarships, which we're going to talk a lot more about, so I'll keep going. Okay, types of grants. So you have your federal level grant. That's mostly going to be the Pell Grant that we talk about. So the Pell Grant, the current amount for this next school year is $7,395. And in the past, that amount has gone up, each year, only about $500, but we have seen it stay level. It stayed the same for the past couple of years. $7,395. That's the full amount of that Pell Grant. For the year.
Into
Mm-hmm.
2 semesters.
Right, so that would be a fall and a spring and a summer, semester.
So if your school costs less than that, then sometimes people
Get a refund.
people getting refunds
Yes.
because their school costs less than $8,000.
Exactly, like Dallas College.
What's the number?
7,395. And so when we're talking about Dallas College, or again, any community college that is close to home, that is in the county that you're a resident of, you're looking at a tuition cost of about $1,500 to $2,000 per year, typically. So that obviously is less than what you would get in that full Pell Grant if you're eligible for that. And so you'll be able to pay that full tuition cost and then have a little bit of leftover each semester that you would be able to put towards books, supplies, transportation, really any expenses that you would have. And that's how people, if you need to buy a laptop or tablet, things like that for your coursework, you can use that money for that. And you do have to reapply for that every year. You have to recertify your income, for that through the FAFSA. And that amount, that full amount, is for the people with the most financial need, right? So you can get a smaller amount of the Pell Grant, just again, depending on what your finances were on the FAFSA. The FAFSA is also going to be looking at your income 2 years prior to the year that you're actually going to be enrolling. So what I mean by that, so if you're doing the FAFSA form for the 2025-2026 school year, right? They're going to be looking at your tax return information for 2023. Yeah. Now, there's exceptions to that. They'll always be pulling your 2023 information, but if you were making a lot more money in 2023 than you were now, they can override that information. So just know that it's not something to stress about if your income was vastly different in 2023. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was gonna say, the terminology for your need is SAI,
Yes.
right? And the most need is negative 1,500,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And anything from 0 to negative 1,500 is going to qualify for the full Pell.
Right.
If it is over 0, when you get that student aid index or that SAI, it'll be a smaller amount of the Pell Grant or up to no Pell Grant eligibility. And we'll talk about what the options are for students who maybe not be full Pell eligible or eligible for Pell at all. There are other things out there.
So for the benefit of the people who are watching, we have about 30 people watching, please raise your hand so I can give you the mic to ask your question, because your question is the same question with everybody else. Right? So you know,
Well, I was saying that the terminology for your need, the most need, or being more low income is SAI. I just learned that doing the FAFSA this year.
Oh, you did the FAFSA
and
this year, yeah.
and so the highest level of need is negative 1,500.
Yes.
So when you actually finish your FAFSA, then you get an email, and I had never seen it on my first child.
Yeah.
But I saw it on this child on the email. It says your SAI is negative 1,500. So that means I
Full
got
Pell.
the highest level of need.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
something that when you're talking to the financial aid office, maybe, you reiterate that you're at the highest level of need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't know that terminology, SAI, before.
Yeah, and that is actually a newer terminology. So in the past, when you maybe did it with your first child, it was called the EFC. So that was expected family contribution. And then in the past 2 years, the FAFSA went under a major overhaul. Lots of things changed about it, and that EFC became the SAI. So it used to be the lowest you could get was an EFC of 0, which meant the most need. And then SAI, they said it's not just going to be 0 anymore, it's going to go down to negative. And what that actually means, when the institution or the college is looking at that, so if they see anything from 0 to negative 1,500, they know that that student has a lot of financial need. 0 is going to, again, be low enough to get the full Pell. But anything below 0, up to that negative 1,500, is actually also going to tell that institution, this student needs more than the Pell Grant. They need other grants or other scholarships or other aid that we have. And we will talk about universities that are really good at offering other aid in addition to the Pell Grant. But that is exactly what they use to make those determinations. Yes, ma'am.
And then, while I'm getting this to you, if someone needs help filling out that form, where can they go? Because it's sometimes very complicated, and also people who may not have a need,
Yeah.
they still need to fill out that form anyway. And talk
Yes.
a little bit about why that's important to do for anybody, whether they
Yeah.
have a need or not.
The FAFSA is always going to be the first stop, regardless of what you think your financial need is or what you think your income situation is. You always want to complete that FAFSA. And you want to do it every year. So typically the FAFSA is going to open up for that next school year on October 1st. Again, with this past couple years, it's been a little fuzzy, a little weird. And it actually opened up in January or December. But in the past, it's been October 1st. So I'm hopeful that this year it'll be October 1st again. And so it can be a complicated form. They've done a lot to try to make it easier. Some of that has been successful and some of it hasn't. And for y'all that have done it recently, you know. If you need help with that, that is exactly what our program is here for. And again, even for our online viewers, if you're in another state, you can still contact our office, even though we're located here in Dallas-Fort Worth. We can guide you through that over the phone or through a virtual appointment as well. Collectively, we do thousands of FAFSAs a year. And that's really our wheelhouse, is accessing that financial aid. So if it's something that feels intimidating or you're having an issue, we can help. I would say that the most difficult part of that process right now, ever since the update, is creating your federal student aid account. Or if you already had one from a long time ago, which we see a lot of that too, accessing that account. And we do that all day in, day out. So if that's something that you're having trouble with, we can help navigate through that. Because honestly, that is 75% of the work now, is that account. And once you're able to access that federal student aid account, and again, that's just your login. It's, you know, that you're certified as that person that is logging in and accessing this site. Then you should hopefully be accessing the things that they have tried to make simpler, which is like they will do a data retrieval from your IRS, from your tax return information, things like that, if you're eligible for that. But there are scenarios where it can still be complicated. I know you had a question, I'm sorry.
You actually answered it, but my question was when are rising seniors, when do we need to complete the FASA?
Yes, so, and I will say, for my rising seniors, again, I'm hopeful that it'll be October 1st again for this upcoming school year. And whenever it does open up, the sooner you do it, the better. And the reason for that, so your federal grants, the federal student aid, that will never change no matter when you do your FAFSA. That'll be the same whether you did it as soon as it opened up on October 1st or whether you did it in July prior to enrolling, right? But if you do it sooner, you're not only going to be accessing more of that federal aid, but you're going to be first in line for the state and the institutional, because that is first come, first served. So those universities and those colleges will start giving out that aid as soon as they're able to. They want to give that money away. So you want to be first in line. You want them to see you first and know your need so that you can access that. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. My first question was, is there a legit professor's rating like app or website that can be trusted? Because I've heard from other classmates in the past about an app that's good to kind of rate the professor and see what kind of professor that person is before taking, accepting to take that class with that specific person. So I just wanted to know if there was a legit app for that, or if I should which ones should I stay away from, or anything you know about that.
That's a great question. I bet that there are other people that know more about that than I have, since it's been a while since I navigated that for myself. The only one that I know of is Rate My Professor. If somebody else has any to add to that, then please do. Rate My Professor, with all things where you can leave ratings, take it with a grain of salt. I think if you see a lot of things that are saying the same thing, then that may be legitimate. But of course, everybody has their own opinion, and every professor is able to reach different students. I say that about my own advising team. We are all different, and I love that because there's a lid for every pot, right? There's a professor for every student. There's an advisor for every student. Just because I'm not able to reach somebody and connect with them doesn't mean that one of my team wouldn't be. And I would say the same on the professor level. But Rate My Professor is currently the only one that I know of. And it's been around a long time. So.
And then the second question I had was, is there any type of way, or I guess website, that I can use to look at, because I'm trying to transfer colleges, so I want to see what on my transcript is not going to transfer. Do I have to go through the administration with the college I'm trying to transfer to, or is there another website that I can use that can kind of give me another comparison?
Yeah, so there are actually a couple resources that you could go to. One that's fairly new within this past year is, and this is for my Texas people, so I'm sorry for our online viewers out of state, But one resource for Texas institutions is called My Texas Future. I think it's mytexasfuture.org. And you can create an account on there and add your own education and even career history and see how that may line up with different universities and different degree programs within the state of Texas. There's also, I am blanking on the name of it. I used to use it a lot. I can get that information to you once I'm able to look it up.
It has the name transfer in it, I think.
I'm sure it does. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So there is, oh, it's right there. It is right there. So I used to work in admissions at Tarleton State University. And I will say, though, that every university and also every community college is going to have an advisor who specifically works with transfer students or a coordinator who is over transfer students.
Transferology, is that a real one or not? There's one called transferology.
I think transferology is a real one, and the one that I was thinking of is you can actually list out the courses that you have completed and have credit for and see how those credits would transfer and work at.
It says college transfer simplified. I don't know if that's in the
I have heard of transferology. I haven't used it much, so I don't know exactly. The one I'm thinking of, we can get you that link, though.
collegetransfer.net.
So you're thinking about where you can go to just put in your classes and see what colleges will receive those credits, right?
How those credits would transfer.
So that is definitely easier. But the other question you had was, do you have to go on to the actual college that you want to go to and put it in? Because I know when I was doing this for my daughter, I actually went to the colleges that she wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And I put those credits in there. And I think my thought is, if you want to make sure that you can transfer those credits and they are going to be taken for your degree plan, you should go to the college website that you want to go to and put it in there, because everything else is just third party and it may not be current.
I will say, though, that there is one website, and I'm so sorry that I cannot think of it, because it actually does use, it uses the degree plans from the schools. And My Texas Future, even though it is technically third party, is also, and again, I apologize to our out-of-state viewers, but there may be a similar resource in the state that you're in that we could get you access to. But My Texas Future also is created and maintained by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So it is pulling actual real information from the degree plans at each school. And then you also can go straight to that school and they will have a degree plan. Especially universities, they're gonna have a degree plan that you can actually look at how things will transfer.
So in regards to the topic that we're discussing right now, I want to piggyback on what Clifton said. I've worked with, this may help some of our more national viewers today. I was working with a student in Delaware recently in guiding her through the process, and she had a very similar situation where she wanted to transfer from where she was and wanted to make sure that as many of her credits went to the school that she was selecting. And honestly, my old school suggestion was go up to the campus, because when you're the squeaky wheel, and I don't know how many schools you're trying to choose from, go to the school, go to their admissions, go to student services, and find that one advocate on that campus or that one person on that campus to specifically speak to you about your transcript and your degree plan, what you're planning to do. And when I made that recommendation to her, she was able to get a lot of work, a lot of answers. And then also, when she was selecting between 3 different universities, once she made her decision, now she had an advocate on campus. If she ever had any other issues about anything, like, what do you call it? My food card is not working today. I mean, honestly, because when you have that one person on campus, that that goes a long way.
Yeah,
So I just wanted
absolutely.
to share that with you.
Absolutely, and that's, I mean, really, if you just call the admissions office at any of the schools that you're thinking of and ask for the transfer person, there's a transfer person,
Yeah,
and
there's-
that's what they do all day long.
There's nothing that can replace relationships and connection to resources. So did you guys have a question first?
Yeah, no, absolutely, all day
Okay,
long.
so to piggyback on the transfer, I wanted to make a statement and ask a question.
Mhm.
So, another benefit to going to the actual school that you're wanting to transfer to, and things could have changed since I was in college, but something I found advantageous, and I don't know if they still do this, but when I wanted to transfer, it was in my best interest to go to the actual school I wanted to transfer because there was a limit. I don't know if there still is for the amount of credits that you can transfer. But then
There
even
is.
once you hit that limit, then you may be able to have a conversation about which classes you want to transfer because that will impact your transferring GPA, which could also put you in position for different grants that are GPA merit-based. So
Yeah.
I'm not for sure if that's still something that happens, but if it is, could you
is.
confirm that just to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that question?
Yeah, that is something that is still applicable to today, that there is a limit. Each institution has a limit on the number of credits that you could transfer in because they have a certain number of credits that they want you to complete in-house, right, to get that degree. So if you're talking about you have 100 credit hours, and typically it's going to be 120 credit hours to get that bachelor's degree, you know, they may have a requirement that you need to take more credits there. But like you said, there are exceptions. And I will say that that's one of the things that we, when I'm doing a longer workshop on higher education, advocacy is such an important piece of that. Advocating for yourself, primarily, because nobody can do it better than you. You are the person that can speak up for you and have people hear you. Having worked in admissions, it is true that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Exactly what you said. It is true. And almost every rule in higher education, now again, don't go tell people I said that, but almost every rule in higher education is a little bit flexible. So even if they have something on the books that says this is the way that it is, it actually may not be that way for every student. But you have to tell people, right? You have to tell people this is what I need, this is what I'm having trouble with, and you may be surprised what doors open as a result of that. An example of this would be when I was working at Tarleton, there was a student who came that was sleeping in his car. I mean, and when you don't know what people are going through by looking at them. You don't know. He was completely alone. He didn't have anybody in his corner to help him through. He didn't have anybody guiding him. And he had done a lot of the steps on his own without getting any other help, but he mentioned that to one person, and one person who worked at Tarleton. And so she made a couple calls to us in the admissions office. And from there we were able to contact housing, get his housing application fee waived. Financial aid needed to know, so that they can make sure that he had everything in place. But had he not actually disclosed that, we may not have known, and he may have thought, well, I have to come up with this $200 housing application or I can't go. And then he might not have gone. So it's always okay and encouraged to speak about what challenges you have, because if people don't know, they can't help you. We like to say a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
Getting back to the grants we were talking about, federal grants, I wanted to make sure that I had it correctly because I thought I was proud of myself that I finally understood. So when you're
No,
talking
you were
about
doing
the
great.
studentaid.gov,
Yes.
that is like an umbrella website,
Mhm.
umbrella account. And
Correct.
then within that, you do the FAFSA. Like I still have student loans.
Yes.
And so now I have my student loans.
Yes.
From 1990.
Yep.
And then I have my two children
And you can
because
see.
they first, I don't know if you all know, the child does a FAFSA,
Mhm.
and then he authorizes it to his parent or
Right.
guardian. And so then go, so you get an email, and then you do the FAFSA for the child.
Yes.
And so you do that. So I have that for both children. And then on top of that, unfortunately, I got a Parent Plus loan.
Yep.
So then that's another category.
You'll see that all there.
So I have 4 different categories of loans within my studentaid.gov.
Yes.
And then the child has their own studentaid.gov account too.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like an umbrella. The studentaid.gov is an umbrella account, especially if you're a parent.
Yeah.
So that's what I finally understood.
No, I'm glad
and
you
then
said that.
differentiating between the loans that are subsidized and not subsidized, you call different 800 numbers, even though it might say Mohela. It's still a Mohela loan, but one is subsidized and one isn't. So
Yeah.
I call a different number for those.
Yeah.
So it's so confusing. But
It's-
is that somewhat am I
No,
understanding correctly?
You were spot on. And
Okay.
you were spot on about everything you said.
So Hannah,
No, you absolutely have.
4 years.
Yeah.
Hannah, we want to, like, around 20 more minutes, right? I want to make sure that you have enough time to go through your presentation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I want you to do this because I know that this is very complicated. It's always important to have advisors.
Yes.
And one of the services I think you offer is counseling services, right?
Yes. So for those especially who were not here when we were talking about what our program does, college and career advising and that financial aid piece again is a big part of what we do every day, especially within Dallas here in Johnson County. But again, even if you're outside of those bounds, a lot of what we do is going to apply to anybody. And everything you just said is absolutely spot on. So it's very complicated, right, when you're applying for financial aid and trying to navigate that landscape because there's so many different pieces of it. And especially on the parent side versus the student side and all that goes into that. And again, that was a change within those past couple of years. So it used to be, I know we've got to move on. Again, I could talk about the FAFSA all day, y'all. So you're going to have to stop me.
Than it was 3 years ago.
Yes, and I'm very glad. I'm very glad that it was a better process. Because in the past, you had to access it all together. And that was the goal, was to make it easier and to make it more simple. Okay, anyway, moving on. We've talked about the Pell Grant already, so I'm going to keep going. Some other state grants, again, just to be aware of, are the Texas Public Education Grant is a big one. You'll also hear people call it the TPEG. That is really great for workforce programs. It's administered by public colleges and universities, so you're not going to see that at a private university. The Texas Educational Opportunity Grant, and these are all statewide. Tuition Equalization Grant is another one that is awarded by private universities to students in need. So when we talked about private universities being a more expensive option, they may not be. They may actually be able to bring that tuition down to a state level. There's also the Texas Grant, and then finally there's the Perkins Grant, and I believe that the Perkins is not just limited to Texas. I could be wrong. The Perkins Grant is great for non-traditional students. So by that, I mean they actually really prioritize students who are going to be enrolling in a program where they may not be traditionally represented. And that can be a variety of things. So it could be if you're a female student going to enroll in automotive. If you're a male student going to enroll in a nursing program, yeah, you may get higher priority for that Perkins Grant. And it can also reimburse for travel and supply fees. Okay, now we're finally into the we talked about a lot of stuff before we got here, but we're here. So we've got some scholarship strategies that I just wanted to, these are general good rules of thumb when you're looking at applying for scholarships. And then we're also going to go through what some scholarship sources are, where to find them, and then go from there. So the number one thing that I think a lot of people are intimidated by, and I think this is one of the things in general about scholarships and applying for them. It can feel intimidating. Just like when you're completing that FAFSA or trying to navigate that landscape, it can feel overwhelming, and that can be enough to make you feel like, I'm not even going to go there. even though applying for scholarships can be or feel like a lot of work, that's what makes it worth it in the end. Because the more work or the more pieces that go into a scholarship application, the fewer people that are actually going to go through with it and apply. The less competition you're going to have. If you're having to write an essay already, there's a lot of people who counted themselves out and said, I don't think I can write a good essay, so I'm not going to apply for it. If you're having to put together a budget spreadsheet, of what you think your finances are going to look like your first year of college, already a whole bunch of people said, no, thank you. If it's hard work, it's less likely that you have competition. And I have a few stories that I will talk about on that. And the thing about a scholarship essay, it is not a big deal. It's really not. Most scholarship applications are even going to want you to keep it pretty short. I would say typically they're looking at 500 words. 500 words is not a lot, y'all. We have already said way more than 500 words today. You're looking at about 2 paragraphs.
I was going to ask.
It's important to make sure that people on the online audience can hear our questions, because you're not just asking for yourself.
I was just going to ask, because like you said, a lot of people dread the scholarship essay.
Yes.
Don't know if we're doing it right. And some people have been rejected a lot, and it doesn't really motivate them to write it again. Is scholarship essay writing helps a service that you guys offer help with?
Yes. So we will, of course, we're not going to write the essay for you, right?
No.
But we're going to help you read and revise it and make sure that it packs as much punch as it can. Now, I will say, the advice I like to give is, in general, most scholarship essays are going to fall into one of 2 categories. There's going to be exceptions to this rule, but I would say almost everyone that I've come across, I think Coach Leah will be able to speak more on this too, but most that I've come across are going to fall into 2 categories. You're going to have some that want to see how you've demonstrated leadership in your life, and that can be a lot of things. So I would prep one outline or one draft essay that talks about an area where you showed leadership. That could be, in an extracurricular. It could have been playing ball. It could have been volunteering at church. It could have been anything like that. Or even just being the oldest sibling, something like that. When did you demonstrate leadership? Explain how you did that. That's one draft. And then you're going to prep one more draft. And this one is going to be about hardship. When did you have to overcome an obstacle? How did you do that? What did that look like? Coach Lee, I'm going to let you speak. And make sure that your voice comes through that. Because at the end of the day, the people reading these are real people, and they want to get to know you as a student, as an individual, and what makes you you.
So as a national organization, I think I shared that I'm the National Scholarship Chair for Continental Societies Incorporated. What our committee did was we revised the requirements, and one of the things that was most important, I felt, especially with the onset of AI, is to make sure that the essay was a persuasive essay. And so if you're not remembering the difference between the different types of essays, just do a quick search of what is a persuasive essay.
Yeah.
A persuasive essay will absolutely have the things that are on the screen right there, and you can't help but make it personal when you're doing a persuasive essay. So I just wanted to share that, and so thank you for that. I'm so happy. I'm patting myself and our committee on the back right now, because I feel like the job that you do in your organization is a very strong organization, and as a national organization that provides scholarships nationally, that we are in alignment. And so
I'm glad.
and I 1000% agree. Do not dread that. Do not dread writing an essay. If you can think about what are the things that I can say about myself,
Right.
and persuade you to give me this money, that's what we
Right.
write about.
Yeah. It does not have to be hard, and it does not have to be overwhelming. And you can use AI as a starting place. I would absolutely, we're going to talk about AI too. I would say AI would be a great place to help you kind of get an outline and get a general sense of what things might be good to include. But at the end of the day, it's your voice. It has to be your voice. So don't overuse it either. So using AI to your advantage. We can't shy away from AI. It is the way, yeah. It is what is overtaking everything right now. I mean, you can't get away from it. You can use, so this is the ways that I think AI would be great to use in a scholarship setting. You can use that to help you find scholarships that might be a good match. I did a little test run of it to see what kind of things it would give me, and it did come up with some good ones that I hadn't heard before. So you can use it as like a search engine. You can also use it to help you outline your essay or proofread your essay, like put it through there. You could say, so something that you may not be surprised to hear about me is that when I'm writing, I can be too long. And so you could take your essay and put it into your AI tool of choice and say, help me make it a little shorter. But at the end of the day, make sure that your voice shines. Your voice has to come through. Because if you're overusing ChatGPT, and I see it, you can tell. After a while, AI has its own voice, and it's very, very strange to think about. But you can tell when something is ChatGPT versus a real person who wrote it. So use AI to your advantage, help it make your life easier, but it is not a replacement for your humanity, right? Here's some good ones. ChatGPT is great, of course. That's the main one that people are using now. But there's also Gemini. Gemini AI is another one by Google. Copilot is one by Microsoft. Those are options. And when you're a college student, you can get free access to the more advanced level of those AI tools. So that's something good to keep in mind. And then Canva is one of my favorite things. I love Canva. I use it every day. Canva has a lot of great AI tools. So what is Canva? It can help you create presentations like this one. It can help you create your resume. It can help you create anything, a social media post. So say a scholarship wants you to provide a resume or provide something that's a little more visually appealing, you can do that in Canva. And they have AI tools within Canva that are very easy to use. Starting local. And this is going to be true for any level. Starting local is always what I advise because you're going to have a little bit less of a pool of people applying for those, because not everybody's going to be a graduate of Garland High School or a resident of Dallas County, right? There are a lot of sources of local scholarships. Examples being banks and credit unions, y'all, are a great source of funding on a local level because they want to fund students that are within their own community. Of course, nonprofit organizations, there are quite a few out there. The YMCA of Metropolitan Dallas has a scholarship program, so that would be an example there. Community foundations, so you have the Communities Foundation of Texas, and I apologize for my online viewers, but this is true regardless. I'm just naming examples that are specific to our local area. Communities Foundation of Texas, the Dallas Foundation, and the BOMA Foundation all have scholarships. Communities Foundation of Texas has a lot of scholarships, y'all, so that's a great starting place too. And then unions and local businesses, law offices, I frequently see have a scholarship program. But that's just an example.
So before you move on, so this is in Texas. Again, from a national perspective, there are organizations similar to this in other states.
Exactly.
I know that from the parents' angst is that when I was helping my son look for scholarships, you know, they already have a busy life like we don't.
Yes.
But they're not going to do the work.
Curating.
A tremendous amount of work to look through all
It
these
is.
sources.
It is.
And so the deal that I worked out with my son was that, look, I'm going to find them, but if I find them, you're going to apply.
You have to
You're
apply.
going to do the essay, you're going to do the work. So what can you speak to about a strategy for a parent, for a family, to really put forth the effort to explore and look if they don't know where to look? Like, what would you consult them on as a consultant or a counselor to help them?
Right. That's why when I'm looking for scholarships, and this is something that we also do, so we can curate a list, right? Because that is a lot of the work, is just finding it and then determining, am I eligible or is my student eligible for this based on the criteria. So we can help curate the list, but if it's something that you're doing on your own, what I always try to look for, I mean, again, AI tools can help with this. I tried it, and it worked pretty well. It gave me some good ideas. I put into ChatGPT, find me some scholarship, and you can get nitty gritty. I mean, you can lay out the criteria if you want to. Help find me some scholarships that match X, Y, and Z. And it did. So that's one way to start. I like to look at sources where there's a lot of scholarships that you can kind of choose from, right? So that you're not having to go to all these individual places, because that to me starts to feel like, okay, I can't do this, you know. If you can, again, find a community foundation within your state or within your region, that's a great place to go. Organizations that, and then another great starting place that it's going to sound a little bit weird, but if you go to the school district website, even a school district that you don't go to, their counselors are also doing this work. So sometimes. Some are better than others, though. And actually, on my search engine list, you're going to see that I weirdly have Fort Worth ISD on there. And the reason for that is because their scholarship listing is incredible, and they pull scholarships from all over the place. They're not just Fort Worth ISD specific. They are Dallas, they're state, they're national even. But they keep that constantly updated. So something to look into as you're doing your research is to see if the school district does have some listing on their website. And again, it may also, I use that Fort Worth ISD scholarship list for my adult students too. So yeah, don't think that I'm just talking about our rising senior or graduating senior. They sometimes are a good source for anybody. But again, also lean on professionals. Lean on organizations that do this. If it's feeling overwhelming to you as the parent or as the student, there's places like our organization that will help you do this work too. I mean, we're doing this every day. This is our job, right? So you don't have to necessarily be doing this alone. In fact, I don't want you to be doing it alone, and that is why we're here. Help us do the work for you. Another big piece of the work is going to be gathering those needed documents. Every scholarship's a little bit different in what they want, but in general, you're going to see them want your transcript. So if you're a high school student, they're going to want that high school transcript, or if you've done any dual credit, include that as well. If you've gone to college in the past as an adult student, get those college transcripts. Test scores. Go ahead and start. And you can use, once you've put this information together, you can use it over and over and over again. Another one that people are going to want to see is, were you a member of an organization or a club? What years did you do that? What was your role? What kind of things did you do? So these are things that people can do, like you can have all this prepped in advance, and that's going to make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to the actual application process. Extracurricular activities, same thing. What years did you do it? What was it? What was your part in that? Recommendation letters. So not every scholarship will require a recommendation letter, but a lot of them do. So what I would go ahead and have kind of ready is, who are you going to ask for on an academic level or professional as an adult? But as a student, like what teacher or what coach, your counselor, whoever it may be, who would be able to provide you that recommendation letter? And go ahead and have that conversation with them and make sure that's something that they would want to do. And then also have a recommendation letter from, like on a personal level. Who knows you in the community? It could be somebody at your church. It could be somebody at a community organization. See if you can get a recommendation letter kind of primed from that aspect also. Personal and financial documents. So if you have done any community service hours, get all of that put together. Of course, the FAFSA, like we talked about, is going to be the first thing that you do. So you're going to want that FAFSA submission summary that has your SAI and what your need is. A lot of scholarships are also going to want you to have a budget, because what they want to see is that you have need, right? So one big scholarship in Johnson County that I can think of, and it can be a full ride scholarship, so it's worth it, right? They want a budget put together for what you think your expenses are going to look like. So they want to know, how much are you going to have to pay for rent? How much are you going to have to budget for groceries? Do you have to pay car insurance? Add that in there. Are you going to need to buy books? Add that in there. Your gas bill, put that in there. Your cell phone, all those things. You're going to add up all your expenses, and then they want to see what other kinds of aid are you already getting. So if you're qualifying for that Pell Grant, add that in there. But what they really are looking for, right, is at the end of the day, you still have a lot of money that you need, and that gives them an idea of what level of funding they need to come up with for you as a student. So that's something, and again, ChatGPT can help you with that. So you don't have to do that from scratch, but make sure that it's something that makes sense at the end of the day. And then employment history or resume, that's always something good to have. A lot of scholarships will require that as well. And then again, get those essay drafts kind of ready, and you can tweak those as you find the scholarships to apply for. So this is all homework you can do at any point. And I would do all of this up front because, again, the actual application process is going to be a lot easier once you have all of this prepared.
My question is, for those students, rising seniors,
Mm-hmm.
who have not worked, does that hinder them?
No.
Do they look at, like, there's no financial need? Because
Oh,
you
no.
have parents like me, like, your only job is to,
To
focus on school,
be in school.
part of extracurricular.
Not at all.
necessarily.
Not at all. I don't think that's going to hinder at all. No. And I would not stress about that. I only included that because, of course, if you do have employment history, that's something that I would include. Or for adult students who are applying, that's something that you should definitely include. But for a student who has not worked yet, that's not going to be a hindrance, and it doesn't mean that they won't see him as having financial need.
One of the things I would say is that for my son, and I'm putting the plug in for the Empower series, for any student that needs volunteer hours or need to do some type of volunteer work, right, so that they can put something on their resume, the Empower series is a nonprofit organization that has every position needed to be done by some volunteer person. And we're looking for interns, and we've had a few student interns before. So I would say, just don't come here to get the workshop. If you want to be a part of the Empower series,
That'd be great.
Okay, so my question, I think he kind of explained it. I was going to ask, when you were talking about being able to demonstrate leadership, even if you don't work, volunteering could be something that you could use to build your resume.
Yes.
And that could be in-person and virtual volunteering, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think any volunteer activity, any internship, again, unpaid or paid, those are great things to include. And they do demonstrate that going above and beyond, right?
Okay, so because I'm thinking having the information, knowing what to do with it, but also how to leverage it.
Yeah.
So you could truly leverage, like partnering with with Empower series. You could leverage that to show and demonstrate leadership skills, but also skill sets that you can put on your resume.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
so definitely
a great
it's virtual.
takeaway.
So that means, globally, students in any state can volunteer for the Empower series.
Yeah, virtual volunteering is not something that I have thought about a lot, but I think it's a great concept. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and on that note, look, we are so in sync right now. Y'all are like getting there before I do. Get involved. Those are great ways to do that. So that would be a fantastic takeaway from today. But volunteer in your community somehow. Those are always things that are going to make you jump off paper, right? Participate. Take on, if you're in a club or an organization, take on that leadership role. try to be the secretary or the treasurer or the VP or the president, you know? If you're a member of a church, get involved there. And then again, also if you are a working student and all those things are not something that you're gonna have time or able to access, your employment can demonstrate your leadership. And then this is simple, but very true. The deadline is the end-all be-all. If you did all that work and then you don't submit it on time, it didn't matter. Because a late application is a denied application. So just make sure that you kind of had that running list in advance of what those deadlines are so that nothing sneaks by you. And then also I wanted to add that some scholarships have an interview process. And again, the harder that it is to get that scholarship, the more worth it that it is. So don't be put off by any aspect of it. I have a story about an interview. So if they require an interview process, make sure that you've read what that application looks like, and is that something that you need to reach out and schedule? Because sometimes they're looking for, are you going to take that initiative? They're not going to necessarily be chasing you down to schedule things, right? So just make sure that you're keeping aware of what the requirements are and doing those things on the timeline. So this year, just recently actually, one of our Upward Bound students, she did all of this prep, she put in all this work, she got herself ready for that interview, and she applied for the Gates Scholar program, and she got it. And so now every year of her University of Houston tuition and all her other expenses also for school, paid. So they're going to use her Pell Grant first, but then everything after that is paid. And that is because she put in the work. So if it's work, it's worth it. Don't be put off by an interview or an essay. What? Bars. Yes. Just a general timeline to keep in mind, because this is something that I think I see a lot, is by the time that they're coming to me for a scholarship help, you're on the wrong timeline. Nothing's going to be instant. So something that we kind of want everyone to keep in mind, most scholarship applications are going to open up for the next school year somewhere between September and February. So think about an academic year. Most scholarships are running on that timeline. And an academic year is going to run August through July, or September through August, right? So your scholarship applications are really going to start opening up in the fall of the year prior to that school year. Then you're going to see priority deadlines really happening in February and March. That's true for state financial aid deadlines as well as scholarship priority deadlines. So look at that. Make sure that your timeline's kind of matching up with when you're going to need the money. Always be looking for the next school year, the year in advance. And then later deadlines are going to be May, and then most are going to be making their awards in May through July at the latest, again, for that school year coming up. And we've already talked a lot about this, but I hope everyone comes away from this knowing that the most important is don't be afraid to apply. And I have two stories on this note. So one of my stories is this beautiful woman here in the white shirt. Her name's Quinn, and she is our advisor for our Tarrant County programs. And she went back as an adult to go to college. She started out at TCC. Of course, she did qualify for the Pell Grant and everything and got TCC fully paid for. That was a little bit easier just because of the reduced cost. But then she said, I want to keep going. Got that associate's degree. She applied to Texas Wesleyan, which is a private university, right? So their tuition costs on paper is more expensive. However, she applied for every scholarship she could get her hands on, including one that was specifically for Mexican American students. And guess what? no other applicant was better than her for that Mexican American scholarship. And she got that. She has absolutely no Mexican lineage, right? But she applied because she saw it and she said, I meet all the other criteria. Why not? And you know what? It worked. So it's never going to hurt you to apply for it. Never, ever. Put your name in the hat because you don't know. It might be a yes. And for her, it was a yes, and that made a big difference for her. Another story I have on that. So we're an EOC program, right? And as I mentioned before, there are about 120 EOC programs throughout the country. And we have a national EOC association, and they award 6 $1,000 scholarships every year to EOC participants. And so we put out the call to action every year to get people to apply for that. Well, one year, this was maybe 2021. So again, I mentioned they give out 6 scholarships, right? I want y'all to guess on a national level how many people applied for that. 10 was right. 6 was great. So 10 people applied for it, which means 60% of the people who applied actually got a scholarship. Only 4 of the students didn't get one. The odds of you getting that scholarship were very high. And I see that with a lot of scholarships where people just don't. Again, I think it's because it feels intimidating. It feels like a lot, and you have to write an essay, you have to get a recommendation letter, you have to put this application together, but a lot of people don't do that. And so then, they're going to the scholarship search engines and they're applying for the really easy ones, and those are gonna have tons of people to choose from. But the ones that you had to put in a little bit of extra work for, that competition may not be as fierce as you think it is. What was the name of that one? That one's a National EOC Association scholarship, and I can get you directly. So you do have to be sponsored by an EOC program, but I'm here to sponsor. I volunteer my services.
Now you know somebody.
Yeah. And so then I just want to do some rapid fire. Some of these are going to be national, some of these are going to be a little more local. But just to give you some ideas of where to get started. So local to the Dallas area, I've got this whole big list. Dallas County Promise is one we're going to get more into. Institutional scholarships are also always a great place to start with. So if you're talking about a specific university, go to their scholarship application first. And that's regardless of what school it is. They're all going to have scholarships, and they want to give that money out. They want to award every last dollar that they have.
Does that also apply for people wanting to go back to graduate school?
Yes. So graduate school can be a little trickier, right, to fund. I will say some scholarships are also going to be eligible for graduate level programs. And on the institutional level, what a lot of people end up doing is like a graduate assistantship or a fellowship where you're actually being an adjunct professor or teaching or a teacher's assistant while you're going through that program, and then they're funding it. If you're working full-time, and this is something that I am also looking into right for myself, you're again going to want to start with a program that has lower tuition, as low as you can get. And then there are scholarships out there that you can use for graduate level work as well. I say it's trickier because there's not as many. And also when we're talking about federal student aid, that it's only loans. It's only loans on the graduate level. So
I want to add to that. So it is harder,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a lot of scholarships out there for undergrad degrees and students. But when you look at some of the specialized scholarships and the professional associations, they do say it's for undergrad or graduate work.
yes.
So I would say the effort needs to be stepped up if you're looking for scholarships or grants to fund your graduate school work. But they're out there. Just don't give up, because a lot of people are going to see that it's harder work and they're just not going to look, and they'll default to student loans. But if you put forth the effort, that will be rewarded.
They are out there. Yeah. And again, if you need help to find them and curate the list, we are here. State scholarships, and I know we have out of state, but there are a variety of state scholarships in every single state. And Texas Trio Association also offers a scholarship every year for any trio student. So something to keep in mind too. And then national. So I've already mentioned that National EOC Association scholarship. Jack Kent Cook Foundation is another good one. The McDonald's Hacer Scholarship is for Hispanic or Latina students. Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation is another great one. Horatio Alger scholarships, they have a ton, and they also have some that are specific for career, technical, or trade education. So even if it's just a certificate, I don't want to say just a certificate that would be shorter and you may not traditionally be able to find scholarships for, Horatio Alger, and we have had students get that one. Actually, every scholarship on this list, we have had students get. Dell Scholars is another great one. Horatio Alger, and we have had students get that one. Actually, every scholarship on this list, we have had students get. Dell Scholars is another great one, but I can't express it enough. It's worth it, because again, we have had students qualify for, we've had at least one student qualify for every scholarship listed here. Scholarship search engines. So where can we go? We've got FastWeb is a free one. That's a popular one that people go to. It can pull things from all over the place on a national or local level. Within Texas, the Texas Comptroller website actually had a pretty great list of Texas-specific scholarships, and they also have those Texas grants that we talked about earlier. They have all of those listed out with the criteria. I mentioned before that Fort Worth ISD scholarship page. That has a lot of scholarships from all over the place that they pull. Big Future is another one. Going Merry, Appley, and then again, you can use AI to do some of this work for you and pull scholarships from all over the place. But beware of scams. If you're having to pay for a scholarship search engine or a scholarship service, no. They should all be free. It should be free to find whatever scholarships. Okay, Dallas County Promise, before we wrap up. So participating high schools, just about any school district in Dallas or around Dallas participates. We've got Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Duncanville, Garland, Grand Prairie, Irving, Carrollton Farmers Branch, Lancaster, Mesquite, Richardson, and then also the Uplift Education Charter Schools within Dallas. So